everybody. My name is Jeremiah. This is Man with a Mug. Every time I sit back in this chair, I keep hitting the wall behind me. I think that means I need to scooch my chair out a little bit more. So let me do that real quick. I don't know where I am with the camera, but I'm going to assume it's fine. Hello. This is the end of the day. This is typically what I'm wearing either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. Just a flannel robe, and I do have a shirt on and some sweatpants because it's a little cold in my basement, even though it's coming up on a heat wave here on the east coast of the United States where we are. I have with me a cup of tea, a nice little Maine mug with a mallard on it. This was a gift from a friend of my wife and I, one of my wife's college friends, I think roommates at one point. She was down probably about a year ago to visit us from New England, and she gifted us these mugs. There's another one. It's a brown and tan with a moose on it. I really like that one, but that one's in the dishwasher, so I got the duck one. Duck one's cool too. What I am drinking tonight is a tea called Get Relaxed from a brand called Be Well Teas. This isn't sponsored or anything. I just really like them. This was a gift from somebody, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe it wasn't a gift. Hard to say. It's really good though. Has some rooibos in it, linden, passion flower. I looked up. I looked up how to pronounce this word. Eleuthero root. I think. Eleuthero. I'm gonna go with Eleuthero. Chamomile, English lavender, damask rose, and natural rose flavor. Whatever that means. It's really good though. I like it. Take a sip there, hopefully get myself nice and relaxed. We're going to pick up where we left off on the last episode with Walden, Chapter 1, Economy. This will be Part 2. The Economy chapter is abnormally long compared to the rest of the chapters in this book. After I finished the last episode, I double-checked the length of the chapters, and Economy just seems to be super, super long. It's almost like the introduction to the whole book is what it seems to be. And again, I have read it before, but it's been several years, so I don't remember a lot of it. So I'm going to pick up close to where we left off last time. Essentially, he's starting the book looking at society and being like, what misfortune it is to just toil and work for what purpose? What's the meaning behind all of this hustle and bustle craziness? So picking up with that general idea. But men labor under a mistake. The better part of the man is soon plowed into the soil for compost. By a seeming fate commonly called necessity, they are employed, as it says in an old book, laying up treasures with which moth and rust will corrupt and thieves break through and steal. It is a fool's life, as they will find when they get to the end of it, if not before. It is said that Deucalion and Pyrrha created men by throwing stones over their heads behind them. And there's a Latin paragraph here, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. You know what? I'll try it. Inde gemus durum sumus experientiae laborum et documentadamus quasimus origine nati. I don't know if I did it well. Forgive my accent. Or, as he goes on, or, as Raleigh rhymes it in his sonorous way, from thence our kind hard-hearted is, enduring pain and care, approving that our bodies of a stony nature are. So much for a blind obedience to a blundering oracle, throwing the stones over their heads behind them and not seeing where they fell. Most men, even in this comparatively free country, through mere ignorance and mistake, are so occupied with their fictitious cares and superfluously coarse labors of life that its finer fruits cannot be plucked by them. Warm up the tongue a little bit so I can pronounce words. Their fingers, from excessive toil, are too clumsy and tremble too much for that. Actually, the laboring man is not leisure for a true integrity day by day. He cannot afford to sustain the manliest relations to men. His labor would be deprecated in the market. He has no time to be anything but a machine. How can he remember well his ignorance, which his growth requires, who has so often to use his knowledge? We should feel and clothe him gratuitously sometimes, and recruit him with our cordials before we judge of him. The finest qualities of our nature, like the bloom on fruits, can be preserved only by the most delicate handling. yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another thus tenderly. Some of you, we all know, are poor, find it hard to live, are sometimes, as it were, gasping for breath. I have no doubt that some of you who read this book are unable to pay for all the dinners which you've actually eaten, or for the coats and shoes which are fast wearing or are already worn out, and have come to this page to spend borrowed or stolen time, robbing your creditors of an hour. It is very evident what mean and sneaking lives many of you live, for my sight has been whetted by experience, always on the limits, trying to get into business and trying to get out of debt, a very ancient slough, called by the Latins ace alienum, another's brass, for some of their coins were made of brass, still living and dying, and buried by this other's brass, always promising to pay tomorrow and dying today, insolvent, seeking to curry favor, to get custom, by how many modes, only not state prison offenses, lying, flattering, voting, contracting yourselves into a nutshell of civility, or dilating into an atmosphere of thin and vaporous generosity, that you may persuade your neighbor to let you make his shoes, or his hat, or his coat, or his carriage, or import his groceries for him, making yourself sick, that you may lay up something against a sick day, something to be tucked away in an old chest, or in a stocking behind the plastering, or more safely in the brick bank, no matter where, no matter how much, or how little. Whew, it's going off on a sermon there. I sometimes wonder that we can be so frivolous, I may almost say, as to attend to the gross but somewhat foreign form of servitude called Negro slavery. But there are so many keen and subtle masters and enslaved both North and South. It is hard to have a Southern overseer. It is worse to have a Northern one. But worst of all, when you are the slave driver of yourself. Talk of a divinity in man. Look at the teamster on the highway, wending to market by day or night. Does any divinity stir within him? His highest duty to fodder and water his horses. What is his destiny to him compared with the shipping interests? Does not he drive for squire make a stir? How godlike, how immortal is he? See how he cowers and sneaks, how vaguely all the day he fears, not being immortal nor divine, but the slave and prisoner of his own opinion of himself, a fate won by his own deeds. Public opinion is a weak tyrant, compared with our own private opinion. What a man thinks of himself, that is which he determines, or rather indicates, his fate. Self-emancipation, even in the West Indian provinces, of the fancy and imagination. What Wilberforce is there to bring that about? Think also of the ladies of the land weaving toilet cushions against the last day, not to betray too green an interest in their fates, as if you could kill time without injuring eternity. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country, and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. There is no play in them, for this comes after work. But it is a characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. When we consider what, to use the words of the Catechism, is the chief end of man, and what are the true necessities and means of life, it appears as if men had deliberately chosen the common mode of living, because they preferred it to any other. Yet they honestly think there is no choice left. But alert and healthy natures remember that the sun rose clear. It is never too late to give up our prejudices. No way of thinking or doing, however ancient, can be trusted without proof. What everybody echoes, or in silence passes by, as true today may turn out to be falsehood tomorrow, mere smoke of opinion, which some had trusted for a cloud that would sprinkle fertilizing rain on their fields. What old people say you cannot do, you try and find that you can. Old deeds for old people, and new deeds for new. Old people did not know enough once, perchance, to fetch fresh fuel to keep a fire going. New people put a little dry wood under a pot, and are whirled round the globe with the speed of birds, in a way to kill old people, as the phrase is. Age is no better, hardly so well, qualified for an instructor as youth, for it has not profited so much as it has lost. One may almost doubt if the wisest man has learned anything of absolute value by living. Practically, the old have no very important advice to give the young. Their own experience has been so partial, and their lives have been such miserable failures for private reasons as they must believe. And it may be that they have some faith left which belies that experience, and they are only less young than they were. I have lived some 30 years on this planet, and I have yet to hear the first syllable of value or even earnest advice from my seniors. They have told me nothing. and probably cannot tell me anything to the purpose. Here is life, an experiment to a great extent, untried by me, but it does not avail me that they have tried it. If I have any experience which I think valuable, I am sure to reflect that this my mentor has said nothing about. One farmer says to me, "You cannot live on vegetable food solely, for it furnishes nothing to make bones with." And so he religiously devotes a part of his day to supplying his system with the raw material of bones. Walking all the while, he talks behind his oxen, which, with vegetable-made bones, jerk him and his lumbering plow along in spite of every obstacle. Some things are really necessities of life in some circles, the most helpless and diseased, which in others are luxuries merely, and in others still are entirely unknown. The whole ground of human life seems to have some... I misread that. The whole ground of human life seems to some to have been gone over by their predecessors, both the heights and the valleys, and all things to have been cared for. According to Evelyn, the wise Solomon prescribed ordinances for the very distances of trees, and the Roman praetors have decided how often you may go into your neighbor's land to gather the acorns which fall on it without trespass, and what share belongs to that neighbor. Hippocrates has even left directions how we should cut our nails, that is, even with the ends of the fingers, neither shorter nor longer. Undoubtedly, the very tedium and ennui ennui, I don't know if I pronounced that right. Uh-oh. You know what? No, I can't check. I was going to check the definition right live, or the pronunciation live, but I'm using my phone to record, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep going. Undoubtedly, the very tedium and ennui, which presume to have exhausted the variety and the joys of life, are as old as Adam. But man's capacities have never been measured, nor are we to judge of what he can do by any precedents. So little has he tried. So little has been tried. Whatever have been thy failures hitherto, be not afflicted, my child, for who shall assign to thee what thou hast left undone? We might try our lives by 1,000 simple tests, as, for instance, the same sun which ripens my beans illumines at once a system of earth like ours. If I had remembered this, it would have prevented some mistakes. This was not the light in which I had hoed them. The stars are the apexes of what wonderful triangles. What distance and different beings in the various mansions of the universe are contemplating the same one at the same moment. Nature and human life are as various as our several constitutions. Who shall say what prospect life offers to another? Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for Take a sip of tea after that one. Try again. By the way, if you're still watching, thank you for your patience. I don't want to make a habit of cutting my videos for the sake of, it being smooth. The goal long term is to become better at narrating. And of course, I need to start somewhere. So for those early viewers of mine, thank you for bearing with me. I will probably continue stumbling for quite a while after this, but all in the interest of getting better. It's an insecurity of mine, honestly. You know what? I'm going to be very forthright, and I'll get back to the book in a second, I promise. But I think the biggest fear of mine is to be viewed as incompetent or stupid. Putting that out on the internet, do with that what you will. Who knows how people will choose to react to it. But that's a big fear of mine. So, stumbling over words, narrating, it's tough internally because I don't want to be viewed as stupid. But what is a master if not once a student who refused to give up? So, one day we'll be the master, but for now I'm still under 30, and we have a long way to go, Lord willing. Lots of room for progress. Where in the world did I leave off? Nature and human life are as various as our several constitutions. Who shall say what prospect life offers to another? Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? We should live in all the ages of the world in an hour. Aye, in all the worlds of the ages. History, poetry, mythology. I know of no reading of another's experience so startling and informing as this would be. The greater part of what my neighbors call good, I believe in my soul to be bad. And if I repent of anything, it is very likely to be my good behavior. What demon possessed me that I behaved so well? You may say the wisest thing you can. Old man, you who have lived 70 years, not without honor of a kind, I hear an irresistible voice which invites me away from all that. One generation abandons the enterprises of another like stranded vessels. I think that we may safely trust a good deal more than we do. We may waive just as so much care of ourselves as we honestly bestow elsewhere. Nature is as well adapted to our weakness as to our strength. The incessant anxiety and strain of some is a well nigh incurable form of disease. We are made to exaggerate the importance of what work we do. And yet, how much is not done by us? Or, what if we had been taken sick? How vigilant we are, determined not to live by faith if we can avoid it. All the day long on the alert, at night we unwillingly say our prayers and commit ourselves to uncertainties. So thoroughly and sincerely are we compelled to live, reverencing our life and denying the possibility of change. This is the only way, we say, but there are as many ways as there can be drawn radii from one center. All change is a miracle to contemplate, but it is a miracle which is taking place every instant. Confucius said, to know that we know what we know, and that we do not know what we do not know. That is true knowledge. That is true knowledge. When one man has reduced a fact of the imagination to be a fact of his understanding, I foresee that all men will at length establish their lives on that basis. Let us consider for a moment what most of the trouble and anxiety which I have referred to is about, and how much is it necessary that we be troubled, or at least careful. It would be some advantage to live a primitive and frontier life, though in the midst of an outward civilization, if only to learn what are the gross necessities of life and what methods have been taken to obtain them, or even to look over the old day books of the merchants, to see what it was the men most commonly bought at the stores, what they stored, that is, what are the grossest groceries. For the improvements of ages have had but little influence on the essential laws of man's existence, as our skeletons probably are not to be distinguished from those of our ancestors. By the words necessary of life, I mean whatever of all that man obtains by his own exertions has been from the first, or from long use has become, so important to human life that few, if any, whether from savageness or poverty or philosophy, ever attempt to do without it. Excuse me. To many creatures, there is in this sense but one necessary of life: food. To the bison of the prairie, it is a few inches of palatable grass, with water to drink, unless he seeks the shelter of the forest or the mountain's shadow. None of the brute creation requires more than food and shelter. The necessaries of life for man in this climate may, accurately enough, be distributed under the several heads of food, shelter, clothing, and fuel. For not till we have secured these are we prepared to entertain the true problems of life, which freedom and a prospect of success. Problems of life with freedom and a prospect of success. Man has invented not only houses, but clothes and cooked food, and possibly from the accidental discovery of the warmth of fire and the consequent use of it. As first a luxury arose the present necessity to sit by it. We observe cats and dogs acquiring the same second nature. By proper shelter and clothing, we legitimately retain our own internal heat, but with an excess of these, or of fuel that is, with an external heat greater than our own internal, may not cookery properly be said to begin? Darwin, the naturalist, says of the inhabitants of Tierra del Fuego that while his own party, who were well clothed and sitting close to a fire, were far from too warm, these naked savages, who were farther off, were observed to his great surprise to be streaming with perspiration at undergoing such a roasting. So we are told the New Hollander goes naked with impunity, while the European shivers in his clothes. Is it impossible to combine the hardiness of these savages with the intellectualness of the civilized man? According to Liebig, man's body is a stove, and food the fuel which keeps up the internal combustion in the lungs. In cold weather we eat more, in warm less. The animal heat is a result of a slow combustion, and disease and death take place when this is too rapid, or for want of fuel, or from some defect in the draft. It looks like it's spelled draught, like caught, but I think it's pronounced draft. So I'm going to try that again. Excuse me, I also have something in my throat. Or for want of fuel, or from some defect in the draft, the fire goes out. Of course, the vital heat is not to be confounded with fire, but so much for analogy. It appears, therefore, from the above list that the expression animal life is merely synonymous with the expression animal heat. For while food may be regarded as the fuel which keeps up the fire within us, and fuel serves only to prepare that food or to increase the warmth of our bodies by addition from without, shelter and clothing also serve only to retain the heat thus generated and absorbed. The grand necessity then for our bodies is to keep warm, to keep the vital heat in us. What pains we accordingly take, not only with our food and clothing and shelter, but with our beds, which are our night clothes, robbing the nests of breasts and birds to prepare the shelter within a shelter. And the mole has its bed of grass and leaves at the end of its burrow. The poor man is wont to complain that this is a cold world, and too cold, no less physical than social. We refer directly a great part of our ails. The summer in some climates makes possible to man a sort of Elysian life. Fuel, except to cook his food, is then unnecessary. The sun is his fire, and many of the fruits are sufficiently cooked by its rays. While food generally is more various and more easily obtained, and clothing and shelter are wholly or half unnecessary. At the present day, and in this country, as I find by my own experience, a few implements, a knife, an axe, a spade, a wheelbarrow, etc., and for the studious lamplight, stationery, and access to a few books rank next to necessaries, and can all be obtained at a trifling cost. Yet some not wise go to the other side of the globe, to barbarous and unhealthy regions, and devote themselves to trade for 10 or 20 years in order that they may believe, that is, keep comfortably warm, and die in New England at last. The luxuriously rich are not simply kept comfortably warm, but unnaturally hot. As I implied before, they are cooked. Of course, a la mode. They are cooked. 12-year-olds on YouTube are going to be thinking I know modern slang. I know that one, but not many others. Most of the luxuries and many of the so-called comforts of life are not only not indispensable, but positive hindrances to the elevation of mankind. With respect to luxuries and comforts, the wisest have ever lived a more simple and meager life than the poor. The ancient philosophers, Chinese, Hindu, Persian, and Greek, were a class than which none has been poorer in outward riches, none so rich in inward. We know not much about them. It is remarkable that we know so much of them as we do. The same is true of the more modern reformers and benefactors of their race. None can be an impartial or wise observer of human life, but from the vantage ground of what we should call voluntary poverty. Of a life of luxury, the fruit is luxury. Whether in agriculture, or commerce, or literature, or art, there are nowadays professors of philosophy, but not philosophers. Yet it is admirable to profess, because it was once admirable to live. To be a philosopher is not merely to have settled thoughts, nor even to found a school, but so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates. A life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity. That was a tough one. I almost wanted to say magnanimity, but I was like, that's definitely not the word I'm reading. Magnanimity. I didn't even say that right. What? Magnanimity. It's like 10:30 at night, so my eyes are not functioning, not firing on all cylinders. Magnanimity. I'm going to start that sentence over. To be a philosopher. I'm going to start it over because actually this was pretty profound. On top of me mispronouncing the word. To be a philosopher is not merely to have subtle thoughts, nor even to found a school, but so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates, a life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. Trust. Yeah, this is the next word after magnanimity. And it's so much simpler than magnanimity. We chilling, we vibing. I'm having a great time. I hope you are too. Truest. Just trust. Trust the truest and truest the trust. It is to solve some of the problems of life, not only theoretically but practically. The success of great scholars and thinkers is commonly a courtier-like success. Maybe I should kind of pre-read what I'm about to read. Full disclosure, I'm just starting the camera, saying hello, drinking my coffee or tea, and then just sitting down and reading. I'm not pre-reading any of this, by the way. So any mistakes that I make are very real time, and it's okay. We're just going to keep rolling. We all make mistakes. But if at first you don't succeed, try again. Courtier. The success of great scholars and thinkers is commonly a courtier-like success, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, not kingly, not manly. They make shift to live merely by conformity, practically as their fathers did, and are in no sense the progenitors of a nobler race of men. But why do men degenerate ever? What makes families run out? What is the nature of the luxury which enervates? That's definitely not that word. What is the nature of the luxury which enervates and destroys nations? I'm going to go back and research some of these words afterwards. Are we sure that there is none of it in our own lives? The philosopher is in advance of his age, even in the outward form of his life. He is not fed, sheltered, clothed, warmed like his contemporaries. How can a man be a philosopher and not maintain his vital heat by better methods than other men? When a man is warmed by the several modes which I have described, what does he want next? Surely not more warmth of the same kind, or as more food, or richer food, larger and more splendid houses, finer and more abundant clothing, more numerous, incessant, and hotter fires, and the like. When he's obtained these things, those things which are necessary to life, there is another alternative than to obtain the superfluities. Superfluities. It's not superfluities. That's definitely not right. That's how it's spelled. Superfluities. Superfluities. I got a lot of homework to do. There is no other alternative than to obtain those things, the superfluities. And that is to advance on life now, his vacation from humbler toil having commenced. The soil, it appears, is suited to the seed, for it has sent its radicle downward, and it may now send its shoot upward also with confidence. Why has man rooted himself thus firmly in the earth? But that he may rise in the same proportion into the heavens above. For the nobler plants are valued for the fruit they bear at last in the air and light, far from the ground, and are not treated like the humbler esculents, which, though they may be biennials, are cultivated only till they have perfected their root, and often cut down at top for this purpose, so the most would not know them in their flowering season. I do not mean to prescribe rules to strong and valiant natures, who will mind their own affairs, whether in heaven or hell, and perchance build more magnificently, and spend more lavishly than the richest, without ever impoverishing themselves, not knowing how they live, if indeed there are any such as has been dreamed. Nor to those who find their encouragement and inspiration in precisely the present condition of things, and cherish it with the fondness and enthusiasm of lovers. And to some extent, I reckon myself in this number. I do not speak to those who are well employed in whatever circumstances, and they know whether they are well employed or not, but mainly to the mass of men who are discontented, and idly complaining of the hardness of their lot, or of the times when they might improve them. There are some who complain most energetically and inconsolably of any, because they are, as they say, doing their duty. I also have in my mind that seemingly wealthy, but most terribly impoverished class. I have also had in my mind that seemingly wealthy, but most terribly impoverished class of all, who have accumulated dross, but know not how to use it, or get rid of it, and thus have forged their own golden or silver fetters. I'm going to stop right there. Whew! That was a read. It just shows how much improvement I have left to go. And I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Like I said earlier in the video, if you skipped ahead, I don't blame you. But one of my biggest fears is to appear incompetent. And that does come to the surface if I'm mispronouncing words, especially on camera. Like I said also earlier, I'm not rehearsing any of this. This is organic. We're sitting down. We're reading together. Hopefully you found it funny and entertaining. I kind of fight against myself being like, you idiot, why didn't you not know the pronunciation of that word? You should be more educated than that. Falsely, I think sometimes I pride myself on the things I know or things I think I know. But I appreciated the quote in the book where he quoted Confucius. Where was that? It was a couple pages back. Confucius said, "To know that we know what we know, and that we do not know what we do not know, that is true knowledge." I appreciate that a lot. To know what you know, to know that you know what you know, but to know also, I'm not even on the same page, but that is true knowledge. Basically acknowledging you know certain things and running with those and going, I'm confident in what I know. Here's why I know it. But also be willing to say to things you genuinely don't know the answer to, I don't know. And a lot of these pronunciations in this book, I didn't know how to pronounce them. I'm going to go research them after this book because now I'm curious. And I want to become better and more educated, or better educated, I should say. But it's okay to admit things that you don't know. In fact, I think that's a healthy mode of life to live in sometimes. We can't be 100% certain of everything that comes our way or things that we encounter. We can have the best educated guess with the information that we have at the time, but we're not going to know the end all be all answer to everything that life throws at us. And I struggle with that as a husband and a dad. I want to have the answer to everything, and I'll be a good husband to my wife and be a good dad to my kids. But at the end of the day, sometimes I have to look them in the eyes and go, you know what? I don't know the best way forward here. Kind of stinks. I don't know, especially as a man. I hate to admit sometimes if I don't know something, but it's healthy and it's okay. And as long as we're all seeking together to either solve an issue or to find the answer to something, or just to get past an obstacle that is very hard to traverse in life. If we're doing it together and we're being honest about where we stand with that, then eventually that answer will come. That solution will present itself. So that's encouraging. I appreciate Walden. I don't agree with everything he says in this book, especially as he doesn't learn from his elders. I personally, well, we're reading this book. This was written almost 200 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So in a way, we're learning from our ancestors and the elders, essentially. So I appreciate some things he has to say. I think it's healthy to read things that you don't necessarily agree with. Not that I disagree with everything here, but there are definitely a few points where I'm like, I wouldn't quite say that I would take all the advice of the elders with a grain of salt. There's some wisdom with people in your life who are older than you. Doesn't really matter how much older than you. They could be 70, 80. They could be just a couple years older than you, but they've lived a little bit more life. So it's worth to listen to, I think. You can disagree with me. That's fine. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. We are gonna finish. I don't know if I'm gonna finish it in one gulp. Still have a little bit of tea left. Thank you for tuning in, and again, thank you for your patience with me. I'm really enjoying this. I did have a lot of fun reading this, even though I stumbled over some words. I hope you found those moments funny. You know what? They were pretty funny. I was insecure about them in the moment, but whatever. They were funny. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll get back to it. I'm going to try to... I'm not going to necessarily pre-read from here on out, but in the future, what I'm probably going to do is take a look a couple pages ahead, find a good stopping point. That's actually what I did for this. It's a bit of a longer video than what I think I've done, the only other video I've done before this. But again, economy is just this freakishly long chapter. Not a whole ton of good stopping points, but I will... This was a paragraph break, was where I stopped. And the next paragraph break is 23 pages from that. That's a lot of reading. I could do that in one video, but I don't think that's wise. I'd probably lose your interest really quickly. So, we're going to stop there. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you next time.